We live?
We're
Oh, now we're live.
Yes, we're live.
Welcome back, everybody, to another Friday Hangout with Carlos and Bob. I'm Carlos.
Hey, I'm Bob, and I'm in a weird parallel stretched out universe today. I don't know why. We're
You
just
look
gonna
like
go with
Buddy.
it. I'm on super widescreen mode.
That's good. So you haven't gained weight. You haven't gotten wider.
Yeah, all good, man. I don't know how to fix this.
It's okay. You look good, man. You look good. And I look really thin.
Yeah, we'll just have to deal with it.
I'm compressed and you're expanded. So
Why? I don't get it.
anyway.
Oh, Google, you always make it so much fun.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. It's been a while. I think Bob tried to sabotage the show and just kind of, kidnapped it last week. I heard.
Yeah, it was all good, man. It was all good until it came time to actually put it out on Google, and then we had fun with that. So I switched over to GoToMeeting, and I wrote a little article about the difference between paid and free, and why we pay for certain things, and we pay for them because they work. And when we get things for free, they don't always work, and you have no recourse. So my advice to you guys is, if you really need something to work,
pay for it.
Yeah, pay for it. So, lesson learned.
Very cool. All right, so what are we going to get into today, Bob? We ran a couple of surveys the last few weeks, right?
Yeah, we were looking at those surveys, and we were going to answer some questions on that stuff. So let's pull that up. And I think the general consensus seems to be with this stuff is people just don't know what to charge, or don't feel comfortable with the prices that they're charging, and want to know a little bit more information about that. So
yeah, so this particular survey is a pricing survey that we had taken a few weeks back or a month ago, and we had some people get in there and just give us their questions. Some of the questions that we had were, if you don't recall, if you haven't taken the survey, was, do you have a pricing strategy for pricing your art services currently? Another question was, are you satisfied with your current pricing structure? Is your business profitable with your current pricing strategy? That was a big one. Another question was, could you use some help in developing and improving your pricing strategy? And an overwhelming, almost, like 90% said they needed help with pricing. And then, of course, we collected a few comments and as far as challenges and stuff that people were having coming up with the pricing. But one of the things that I found most surprising is that the question about, are you satisfied with your current pricing, I kind of felt that one was going to come back pretty high. The one that really surprised me was the question that asks, is your business profitable with your current pricing strategy? And an overwhelming, it was only like 29%, just about a third said yes. The other 2/3 said no, or they don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes hand in hand with not knowing how much to charge.
But what surprised me, though, is that they don't know if they're profitable. We kind of touch on this quite a bit on the show, is that, this is a business that you're running. And you have to have, like any business, you have to know what you need to keep your doors open, and keep your employees paid. And for most of us, it's like we're our own employees, so what do we need to get paid so we can stay on the job and we don't have to fire ourselves? So it's having an understanding of what your numbers are to begin with, that I feel a lot of people might not be clear on. They're maybe relying on outside sources to dictate what it is they need to be charging. Because you and I hear this a lot. What should I charge for this illustration, or what should I charge for this? And there is no magic number. I mean, as nice as it would be to just kind of have this kind of standard number out there, there is no magic number. Right? So it really comes down to what it is that you need to be charging to sustain your business.
Right. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So when let's say that something comes in and you need to put a price out on it, what are some of the things that, and I'm going to ask you personally, what are some of the things that you're doing in order to set that price in your head?
Well, I think first of all, you need to have, you need to know how many hours you're setting yourself up to work. I think it's like for me, it's I one of the things I do in the coaching is explore how many billable hours people are going to be billing for on a weekly basis. A lot of freelancers kind of figure 40 because if you were working for someone else, you'd be working 40 hours. But over my past 20 some odd years freelancing, I don't think I've ever billed 40 billable hours. If it might have gone up as far as 25 or 30, but the rest of the time is doing other stuff, meeting with clients, marketing, just other stuff that's not billable. So when you look at the amount of true billable hours that you have, and not only that, you have your teaching course, for example, so you have to allow yourself time to develop, an experiment if you're an illustrator or an artist. And if you're saying, okay, I got 40 billable hours, I'm going to do all that other stuff, after my 40 hours, you're going to be working yourself to the bone. That's why a lot of people get burnt out, So I always recommend that, setting up a billable hours, like for me, it's like usually about 22 hours a week. And then setting my hourly rate, because I don't charge by the hour, I charge by the project, but I have to know what my hourly rate is in order to hit my goal at the end of the year. That make sense?
Yeah, it does. So you're sitting down at the beginning of the year and you're saying, okay, here's how much I expect that I need to make to keep the lights on, to keep my business running, that kind of stuff. And then you break that down into an hourly rate, and then you say, okay, here's how many hours I'm working per week. Here's how much I'm going to need. Now, some clients are going to come to you with projects that have a larger capacity for expanding your budget, and some are going to be very tight. So what do you do in a situation like that?
Well, the way I calculate my hourly rate and the hours that I'm billing per week, my numbers that I need to hit, those are my minimum. And usually when I take on a project, I usually end up charging above that minimum hourly rate. But if you have your minimum hourly rate, I don't think you have to be concerned with losing money. I mean, a lot of these people don't know if they're being profitable. I know if I'm going to be profitable at the very least, and know if I'm going to, if I get a smaller project, somebody with a smaller budget, how far I can go down before I start losing money and start feeling like crap about it. So even at the lowest rate, I'm going to feel fine because that's covering, what I need.
Right. Gotcha.
But depending on the project that comes in, the usage, the client, and the terms of what we're negotiating, those numbers could go up.
Okay, so talk a little bit about what happens when you have somebody who comes in and who wants to do a project with you, but they can't meet your budget.
Well, there's a couple of things that you can do, because I think a lot of people are in the same boat where projects come in and they almost feel like they have to either quote that lowball price to get the project or it doesn't get done, right? I think we all feel that kind of pressure sometimes. So what I do is I come in at the price that I need and that I want, given the scope of the project. If it comes down that they don't have the budget, there are different areas where you can negotiate on terms. And we were talking about this just a little bit ago.
Right.
One of them is time, for example. A lot of clients come in asking for something for yesterday, and have a low budget on top of that, right? That's happened.
Normally stays, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's happened to me quite a bit.
Yeah.
Actually, we talked about it not too long ago when I had a book publisher, actually a design firm that was working with a book publisher that I had worked with several years ago.
Right.
That approached me with a project like that, and they needed it yesterday, and they had this quote that they threw at me.
I believe it was $50.
It was $50 per illustration.
$50 to just about cover the phone call.
Right. Yeah. So so that's an extreme. I mean, that's a huge difference. Yeah. And basically, I just got back to them, and in that one, we didn't have to make a lot of concessions. Yeah. It was just basically we made one concession in as far as the terms and payment. But I told them, I said, I can't do it for that. And if they weren't prepared to do it for the 500 that I ended up charging per illustration, I just wouldn't have done it. But there are ways that you can concede without lowering your price and seeming like, okay, well, if he charged me $500, he was quoting $500. How is he able to do the same thing now for $350? You know what I mean? So you always want to make a concession, have them make a concession somehow, and that's part of the negotiation. I think if you don't do that, you do yourself a disservice, and you kind of lose a little bit of. I think the clients tend to look at you as a little less professional if you just go ahead and give them the exact same thing at a much cheaper price.
Yeah, right. So you have to kind of build in all those little things and say, here's the lowest I'm prepared to go. And then, like you said, if they can't afford you, but they still want to work with you, then you can start to negotiate on your terms. But I think what's important in what you said that about quoting a price and then immediately backing down off that price and meeting their needs really says a lot about who you are and what you're doing. And I think sometimes clients can get a little funny about that stuff. And so the next time a job comes in, this happened to me one time, I did that very same thing. I quoted a job very low, and then they came and they said, okay, well, here's all we got, So all right, I'll take that, and made that concession without really, offering a negotiation. The next time a big job came in, they overlooked me completely, and they went to somebody who was a more established artist. And so what ended up happening to me was I was the guy who always got the scraps. He'll do it for this. He'll do it for whatever. And
right.
That sort of professionalism that I wanted to put across just wasn't selling. They looked at me as that sort of, yeah, we'll give it to Bob. He's the go-to guy.
Yeah, what's sad about it is that a lot of artists and freelancers in general take that approach, and they think they're trying to be helpful. They think they're trying to work with the client and get their problem resolved. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But on the backside, you start feeling like crap because you're not charging what you think you really deserve.
Right, and then it shows up in your work too.
Right. Well, yeah, but then on the flip side, the worst part of it is that the client doesn't see that you're trying to bend over backwards trying to do this for them. They just see you, like you mentioned, like the lower man on the totem pole. Right. That just you're feeding the scraps to. So they lose a little bit of respect for you.
Right.
I don't care what anybody says, they do.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been there. I think what a lot of times what ends up happening is not only do they lose their respect for you, but they kind of wonder, like, well, why was he going to charge us so much in the first place? Is he trying to jack us or something?
Right.
And so then they kind of they question you, and they're like, well, what's up with this guy? Meanwhile, they have no problem going to, and this is, I'm going to go back a few years. This was when Showcase was a big thing. I got this kind of crappy project, and I gave them the lower price because I was hoping that I would get this bigger project because I was wanting to work with them. But what ended up happening was they gave me the crappy project, and they went to Showcase, picked out the guy who had the biggest ad, and they said, okay, how much do you need? And his price was 10 times what I was charging, and they had no problem giving it to him, and he got the big job, and I lost it because I got the scraps.
Yeah, that's a big problem. I mean, and not only that, they devalue mm-hmm. what you bring, or you're devaluing what you bring to the table, and they actually respond to that. So that's a big one. So what else?
So we were looking at. Hold on, let me jump back to that.
I mean, yeah, in terms of while you're looking there, in terms of other things that you can do. I mean, you can always backtrack and say, well, like for example, this other client with the payment terms. You can always negotiate payment terms. One of the questions here, or one of the comments that somebody made on this survey was that they're waiting. What is it? Blah, blah, blah.
Oh, they were waiting for over
60, 90, 180 days for payment from clients. That, to me, that's crazy. And that has to mostly do with, again, setting up your business the way that you want. I remember in the early days when I had the full-service art studio, when I was working with a lot of agencies, it was customary for payment to come out 60 to 90 days. I mean, the agencies would float the money.
Right.
And that was common practice. I mean, it's not like it was a big secret or,
No. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so it was a common practice. And I finally just put my foot down and said, look, I need cash flow here. I'm a business like you guys. and cash flow is key. If I don't have cash flow, I'm struggling needlessly. So I need to get payment in 60 days. And just by saying that, I was able to start getting payment in 60 days. I mean, it wasn't like a big deal. This last client that we were talking about from the publisher, they what was the date on that? It was like 70 days.
I think you said it was 60 or 70.
60 or 70 days.
Yeah.
And I tell them no. I said I need a deposit. I need a 50% deposit, and I need the balance paid on delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, okay, well, send me the wire information, and we'll transfer the funds. It was, it's literally that simple.
Yeah.
And we went from a project that they were offering $50 to, a piece for 2 illustrations, that's $100, to charging $500. That's $1,000. That's a multiple of 10 times of what their original budget that they were going to give me. Had I settled on that, I'd be getting $100, and then on top of that, waiting 60 days to get $100.
Yeah,
I mean, that's ludicrous.
I hear you. So sometimes you just have to get a little bit aggressive about it and put out a statement and say, these are my terms. It should be built into your contract. They make sure they sign your contract, and if you really have to, to push hard on it, you pull out the contract and say, look, we had an agreement. This is what we agreed on, and this is what you guys need to deliver.
Here's the thing too that I've seen, and actually I was guilty of it in the early days in my freelancing as well, but I've seen it with a lot of friends who are illustrators, where they get all bent out of shape and emotional and angry about the way the terms or the way the project is playing out. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, you don't need to get pissed and you don't need to get emotional, and doesn't need to be this heated confrontation. Not at all. Actually, it's the complete opposite. Because the reason why you get emotional and heated is because you've allowed it to go that way, and you haven't defined your way of working, your system of working, of you calling the shots of, okay, this is how I run my business. Mm-hmm. So if you do that from the get-go and say, okay, well, I don't want to wait 60 days for payment. I don't want to wait any more than 30, for example, right? Then you work with clients and you put that out at the very beginning, and you look for clients that are able to work within those parameters.
Sure. Yeah. Take a look at the service people who come to your house. They have a certain way that they expect their payment. Some of them will bill you. Some of them will expect payment that time. Some will charge you a minimum rate for coming to visit you. So all these things are determined ahead of time. And you when you work with those people, you say, okay, I agree to these terms, and then you obviously, if this person is doing work for you, you're going to fulfill those terms. Otherwise, you're not going to work together. It's a give and take relationship.
Yeah, but I mean, as the business owner, it's up to you to kind of define those terms. Mm-hmm. Of what's acceptable to you and what's not. It's that simple. Like, for example, I won't work with a client. I'll give you this personal story, which I'm not proud of. I should have known better. Actually, I did know better, and I just looked the other way. But I won't work with somebody unless they fill out a project brief with me. And sometimes clients aren't in the mood to fill out a project brief because they have to sit down and figure it out and
think.
Yeah, right, exactly. Who wants to do that? But a lot of them would rather say, well, can't we just talk it out and just kind of give me a ballpark budget or whatever? No, because if they're not able to take 10, 15, 20 minutes to go through a project brief and really think about what they want from me and how they want me to work with them, how do you think that client's going to behave once we're in the project? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get stuff on time. It just leads to a lot of problems, and it's just a red flag. I did a project. I don't even know if I should mention who it was for.
I would say
even if I don't mention them by name. But anyway, so, a client of someone very, very close to me.
Oh no.
Family member. Wanted me to do a project for them, and I gave them a client brief. Now, this guy's got money. He's got several businesses. He's well-to-do, but he's very busy. But because he works with someone that's very close to me, I wanted to make sure that I dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's because I didn't want any kind of situation. And I sent him the brief, and he held on to this brief for about 3 weeks. And he just didn't get back to me. He was like traveling, he was busy, and he was like, well, why don't you just like get it started for me, because I really need this thing, and we really need to get moving on it. And I've just been really kind of busy, haven't done the brief. And I said, you know what, I really don't feel comfortable starting on this thing until you finish that brief. First of all, in our first meeting, because we had a face-to-face meeting about the project for about a half an hour, and he wasn't clear on what he wanted. He was still kind of undecisive. So I told him, I said, I'd send you a brief so you can think about what we discussed and kind of focus in on what you need and what you think you really want. So he never filled it in. But then his secretary called me and said, look, I've got the go-ahead from so-and-so. He really needs it, and I just wanted you to go ahead and get it started. How much are you going to charge, and all this kind of baloney. And I said, all right, I'll do it. So I went ahead and started the project, and 2 weeks later the shit hit the fan. It wasn't what he wanted. It was all the red flags, and I ignored them because he was someone who was close to a family member, and I didn't think that it would be that problematic to just pick up the phone and say, hey, this isn't working out, or this is the wrong direction. But it didn't take that route, and with the creative brief, it could have solved all those issues. So we ended up on a kill fee for that project.
Oh, boy.
But I was kicking myself the whole time, because I felt it from the very beginning that this particular instance was definitely an area where we needed to get the creative brief signed and completed just for clarity. And I let it go, just as many of us do for whatever reasons. Either we don't have the rent money, or we've been slow this week. I mean, you come up with all of the different excuses people do use to take on a project that's just kind of waving red flags all over the place. And this one was because of the pressure, because it was somebody I knew, and I figured, okay, well, he's busy, whatever, we'll just go. And I shouldn't have. I
like that story, because we've all been there, and I've been there recently too, by not setting up the upfront work and expectations. That will sometimes allow things like project creep, or misunderstandings, what was going to be delivered, when it was going to be delivered, all those kind of things. So I think the upfront work is really important, and I think that's one of those things that we're going to cover in the class that we're or the coaching program that we're talking about here. So let's get into that. We're going to wrap up.
And one more point that I'd like to make about the creative brief too. If you have a system in place to work, on how you work with a client, mm-hmm. and a client doesn't want to go through that system, that right there is a big indication that you're going to run into major problems. Again, for the reasons that we mentioned.
Yeah.
They don't respect your system of working. So how are they going to behave once you have them in the project? They're not going to respect your, for lack of a better word, authority in what your expertise is, and how you juggle what you're going to be doing for them.
Yeah,
because you've already let that down at the very beginning. You've already given them control and kind of kicked out your whole system out the window just to kind of appease them.
Yeah,
and
it's a good indicator of what you can expect down the road. If
absolutely.
Busy to fill that out, they're going to be too busy to take the time to go through.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very disrespectful for a client to approach you and expect you to change. I mean, it's like if you were to go to, get a loan at a bank, and you have to fill out certain forms, right? And you say, well, forget the form. You don't really need to know what I make and what I just can you give me a $100,000 loan? Like, can we bypass all the paperwork?
Yeah.
No. This is part of the system. This is what we take people through, right? Yeah. So it's something that you got to be careful with. And again, getting back to the pricing and all this stuff, ultimately you're responsible for developing that and for holding true to that. Right. So if you get screwed or you get pulled around by clients, you really ultimately don't have anybody else to blame other than yourself.
Yeah. So I think a lot of that has to do with, sort of finding the right clients to work with, but also training the clients. This is how I do my business. This is what we need to go through. And you don't have to be confrontational about it when you present the material. You just say, look, this is here because it's going to help you.
Right.
You're supposed to turn your phone off before we start.
Yeah. It's just, I thought I had the ringer off, but I had the buzzer.
That was part of the agreement, Carlos.
Right. Well, it was.
All right, so let's wrap up. We're at 20 minutes. Yeah, we're at 20 minutes right now, so let's wrap up. I just want to say that, so you and I we've been talking about this coaching program for quite a bit here. I think this is some of the material that we'll cover when we get into this in a little bit more detail, and talk about how, to set this stuff up and what kind of things you need to do. So what I think the takeaway from this is really getting that upfront work done, understanding what it is that you need to have happen, and then addressing those things and making them happen, rather than waiting and playing catch up.
Right. Yeah. And as far as pricing, a lot of people with the pricing issue, it's like you had mentioned before. A lot of people just don't know what to charge. What they don't know what a piece is worth. What an illustration is worth. And the truth is that it's worth different amounts of money depending on the market that you're going after. So, knowing what you need to be charging and what you need to be making, first of all, is important not only for what you'll be charging as a baseline, but also as an indicator of what markets you would be a good idea to go after. We know a lot of friends that like doing certain types of illustration or cartooning, and they're more applicable to certain types of markets, but those markets maybe don't pay as well. So maybe it's a combination of doing the work that you enjoy for those markets, but also developing something else along, how you can leverage the style that you have, or do something else that caters to a market that's able to give you and pay you the salary and the income that you need.
Yeah, so, I think that's another one of those things that we'll probably go into a little bit more detail with the program.
So I mean, the big issue here with the pricing thing is, like, you have to know your numbers. You have to know, again, a lot of people don't know if they're profitable. That's a clear indicator that they don't know what they need. They haven't done the work to figure out, okay, what are my expenses? So I mean, if you knew your expenses, you knew what you were making, you'd know if you would be profitable or not. Right. So those are really basic things, but we'll cover that as well as my formula for coming up with your minimum hourly rate that I use. I mean, there's probably a bunch of them out there, but in any case, I hope people have gotten something out of this conversation.
Yeah. All right. Yes. Let's wrap up. One thing I wanted to mention before we call it a day here is I have a new program coming up over on Bob Teaches Art. I've got Friday classes. They're going to start 11 a.m. on Fridays. The first one starts next week. I will have a sign-up form over on the site that you can go to. Just putting all that stuff together now. This is going to be really fun. We're going to do an hour class. Each class is 45 minutes long, followed by a 15-minute Q&A. I'm going to be starting with Illustrator. This is going to be a beginner course, so we're going to start right from the beginning, and we're going to kind of work our way through. And then I'll feature different programs as I start to develop this thing out a little bit. But again, it's going to be Fridays at 11.
So every Friday?
Every Friday, yeah, every Friday. And
so is it going to be free for people or what?
Are you kidding me? I got rent to pay. No, man. These will be.
So what is it, like a membership, or what, just a pay-as-you-go kind of thing?
It'll be a pay-as-you-go, yeah. So I'll put the sign-up form each week for these. I'm eventually going to try to work this into a membership program. For right now, I'm just kind of floating this out there. I want to see how it works. So I have got a discount that I posted on Drawn by Success last week. I'll put it in the show notes this week so that people can use that if they want to come over. They get a $5 discount off the first class. And then we're just going to kind of roll forward and see how things go. So again, I'm starting with a beginner Illustrator course, and then we'll look at Photoshop and InDesign as we get a little bit further in.
Okay, excellent. Cool. Sounds
great. It's going to be fun. Really looking forward to it.
Good job, Bob.
I got to tell you, man, that site is really starting to develop out. It's kind of cool. I would say, what was it, about a year ago when we first got this thing rolling? So just a little over a year ago, and things are really shaping up. It's been a really fun experience. I had been talking with you about it for years before I actually made the move on it. and then just dove in, and people responded, and it's been really cool. I've met some excellent artists, and it's been really fun being able to help people through, getting through these different programs that they've been trying to learn and all that kind of stuff. So, man, it's just been really rewarding, and I love the direction it's headed in right now.
Excellent. Well, I congratulate you, sir.
Yeah,
you're an example of what a lot. There's probably quite a few illustrators out there that follow us and friends of ours that have a certain expertise in a certain area that they can also leverage, and not just do illustration. I mean, that's probably that'll be part of what we talk in the coaching program as well, is how to leverage and expand your expertise from across the table, across the board a little bit. But that's the teaching thing is great because it allows you to cover the kind of things that you enjoy, that you want to cover, and it's not like a client assignment where it's someone else dictating what needs to be done. It's basically you doing the things that you enjoy, the things that you want to explore, and helping other people in the process, and making an additional income stream for yourself.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. We could talk about our buddy Fion, who's starting to explore getting into doing a little bit more of the fine art kind of stuff.
Prints and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I think part of it is just making the move and not waiting for somebody to hand you the keys and say it's okay to do this, or asking permission. We get stuck in that sort of permission mindset a lot of times where we wait for something to happen, and unfortunately, if you wait, things never happen. So in this case, we talked about this quite a bit before I did it, and finally one day I was just like, you know what, it's time to pull the trigger. I got all the pieces in place. I've done all my homework. Now it's time to make it happen.
And just build up your audience gradually.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, originally it was pretty scary stuff, but the more you get into it, and the more you get comfortable with it, start delivering this material, it gets less scary and it gets more fun. And so now when I put these classes together, I really look forward to them. I get to interact with my peers and talk to people about things that I think that they really find helpful. So it makes me feel like I'm really making a contribution.
And it's funny because when you at the onset, when you have this idea, there's a lot of questionable variables that you don't know because you haven't started yet. But once you take those first one or two steps, then you see other things pop up, ways to do things differently, or different opportunities that pop up while you're in the process that you don't see before you've taken that first step. That happened with my coaching as well. I had this idea of what it was going to be, but it wasn't until I started actually coaching, because I'd never coached before, so and charged for it. So, but it wasn't actually until you get into the process that you see what areas could change, what areas can improve, and other areas that you can go into, and other needs that you can meet. So it's being in the process that actually creates more momentum for you, not sitting down waiting for everything to be all your ducks to be lined up in a row.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think, I don't know about you, but a lot of times the energy that I get back from the students that I teach really compels me to move forward and make bigger steps than I maybe even thought of on my own, because this is so great. Now I want to learn about this, or this is something that I really wanted to explore, and you explained it to me well. What if you did something like that? And then I start thinking, hey, you know what? This is something that I could do, or this is something that people are asking for. Let's do it.
Right. So, yeah, and you're making a difference.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So let's wrap up. We're at about a half an hour now, so let's just stretch out an extra couple minutes on there. But so again, I've got the program starting next week on Friday. Starts at 11, right after this. After we do this, you can find me at bobteachesart.com. Carlos, where do people find you?
People can find me at dronebysuccess.com, and if they want to read the comic strip, they can go to baldocomics.com, read it there, or go to gocomics.com/Baldo and read the strip there. So anyway, if you have any comments in regards to what we've been talking about, pricing or whatever, put them in the comments section. We'd love to kind of read through those, and it'll give us more information to kind of go through, although we have quite a bit with this survey. But just let us know what your reaction is to our comments, or just pricing in general with your own experience. Okay, and that concludes today's show, Bob. A bit under 30 minutes.
As always, Carlos, it was great to see you, and we'll see you next week.
All right, buddy. See you guys next Friday. Thanks for joining us. Bye.